thing about being underestimated for years is that eventually, it stops feeling personal. It just becomes family tradition. Especially during the holidays, at least. That's what I told myself. As I stepped out of my rental car and onto the stone path leading to my uncle's house in the hills outside Asheville, North Carolina, Thanksgiving had always been held here. Same turkey, same table, same jabs. I'm Vanessa Cole, though to my relatives, I'm just Nessa, the one who never really fit in. I'm 41 now, and the deep green cashmere coat I wore came from a designer boutique in Paris. Subtle, elegant, easy to ignore, until it wasn't. No need to ruffle feathers. Not yet. Well, if it isn't Miss Etty herself, my cousin Jordan called out from the porch, tossing a walnut in the air. Come to sell us some scented candles, Nessa? I smiled, calm and silent. I was already thinking about the quarterly performance review my company's board had just completed, one that ended with unanimous applause. Inside, the air was thick with cinnamon, turkey, and the familiar scent of judgment. Aunt Beverly was already critiquing the stuffing, my brother Dean was rattling on about hedge funds, and Jordan and his sister Elise were gloating about holding down the family legacy at Cole Timber. That coat looks like something from a clearance rack, Aunt Beverly said, wrinkling her nose. You still running that online side hustle? Still flipping old scarves? Elise added with a smirk. Before I could answer, Marley, my assistant, walked in from the kitchen carrying a tray of appetizers. Perfect timing. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Who's she? My assistant, I said smoothly. A beat of silence. You have an assistant? Elise asked, blinking. Marley smiled and handed me my phone. Miss Cole, your legal team confirmed the final paperwork. The transfer is complete. Thanks, I said, scrolling briefly. Oh, and by the way, Cole Timber is under new ownership now. They stared. I raised my glass. Happy Thanksgiving. The truth? Their precious legacy had been sinking for years. While they handed out promotions like candy and clung to old tactics, I built something better, quietly, methodically, digitally. Speaking of success, Elise chirped suddenly, grasping for ground. Guess what? We're expanding next quarter. Funny, I said, sipping my wine. So am I. Cole Timber is opening 2 new mills next year. Uncle Raymond is even talking about taking the company public. I nearly choked on my wine. An expansion. When I knew, based on public records, that they hadn't paid their main contractors in over 90 days? When a lien had just been placed on their primary mill outside Brevard? That was bold. That's ambitious, I said calmly, setting down my glass. Of course you wouldn't understand, Uncle Raymond replied, not even pretending to hide the condescension. Business strategy isn't exactly your thing, Nessa. Takes more than reselling handbags online to run a real company. Laughter rippled through the room like static. Ah, yes. Nessa the eccentric, the one who didn't get it, the one who had walked away from Cole Timber 11 years ago when they offered me a starter job stacking inventory. To learn the ropes, they'd said. Remember when she tried to convince us to invest in digital platforms, Jordan said, grinning? She claimed online resale was the future. Didn't she push for some used clothes site? Elise added. What was it? Eclipse something? Eclipse Luxury Group, I said evenly. Elise snorted. Right, can you imagine if we'd taken her advice? We'd be broke, Jordan chimed in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One vibration. I didn't need to check. I already knew. The Cole Timber bankruptcy filing had just gone public. Right on schedule. Dinner's ready, Aunt Beverly called, waving everyone toward the dining room. We shuffled in. Each place had a name card, and of course, Elise sat beside Uncle Raymond near the head of the table. I was stationed down at the far end, tucked between Cousin Todd and Great-Aunt Miriam, practically in exile by the fireplace. So, Vanessa, Aunt Beverly said brightly as she passed the mashed potatoes, have you thought about finding a real job? I hear the DMV is hiring. Another burst of laughter. I calmly speared a slice of turkey, remembering the day I'd submitted a full digital transition proposal. My MBA thesis adapted specifically for Cole Timber's logistics framework. Uncle Raymond had skimmed it, then set it aside. The warehouse will build character, he'd said. But now, the warehouse and the deed attached belonged to me. It'll teach you humility, he'd told me the day I walked out. Instead, I sold my tiny block of Cole Timber shares back to the family. They thought they were outsmarting me, getting rid of dead weight, I believe Elise called it. They bought those shares at a premium, right before the valuation collapsed. With that cash, I made a quiet investment into a fledgling luxury resale tech startup, Clips. Today, I own a controlling interest, and tomorrow morning my face would be on every financial channel discussing the asset acquisition of Cole Timber's remaining holdings. No one asked how my little side hustle paid for that Milan coat, but they'd find out. Today, Eclipse Luxury Group owns 30 designer boutiques, 6 thriving online platforms, and, as of this morning, its first full-scale manufacturing subsidiary. I set down my fork and glanced around the table. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you all about business. My mother let out a tired sigh. Not this again, Vanessa. Yes, Elise said, rolling her eyes, because your last great tip worked out so well. Didn't that Eclipse thing you liked get bought out or something? It did, I said, with a small nod. See, she said triumphantly, turning to Uncle Raymond. Thank God we didn't listen to her. My phone buzzed again. This time, I reached into my coat pocket and slowly tapped the screen, making sure they all saw. Everything all right? My father asked, a little sharp. Trouble with your side hustle? Jordan added with a smirk. No, I replied, setting my phone beside my plate. Just confirming that Cole Timber's bankruptcy has been approved by the court. Silence. Elise's fork slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. Uncle Raymond leaned forward, his voice suddenly tight. What did you just say? Your bankruptcy filing, I repeated, slicing into my roll. Chapter 11, just approved this morning. Though based on your current liabilities, it'll likely convert to Chapter 7 by spring. That's not possible, Jordan said, his voice cracking. How would you know that? I smiled. Oh, I didn't tell you? I reached into my modest black handbag, the one Elise had called fake when I walked in, and slowly unzipped it. Eclipse was acquired by Morgan Holdings, I said, and Morgan Holdings is mine. Dead silence. My father's face drained of all color. Elise looked like she'd bitten into glass. You're lying, Uncle Raymond croaked. This is some kind of joke. It's not, I said quietly. I pulled a slim manila folder from my bag and laid it in the center of the table, beside the stuffing and a flickering candle. Here's the debt purchase agreement, I said, flipping it open. I own every lien, every unpaid loan, every note your company defaulted on. I paused, letting the weight settle. You all thought I was just playing dress up with fashion tech, but while you were busy laughing, I was quietly buying the paper that holds your future. I slid the documents across the linen tablecloth, right between the cranberry sauce and the gravy boat. This one's my favorite, I said, tapping the creditor ledger with one neatly manicured finger. A full list of your unpaid obligations. I looked straight at Uncle Raymond, letting the final blow land. Nice expansion plan, by the way. Morgan Holdings now controls 82% of your outstanding debt. That's not possible, Elise whispered, face strained. You run a resale website. Actually laughed then, I couldn't help it. Is that really what you've all been telling yourselves I've been doing for the last 5 years? I asked, scanning the shocked faces around the table. While they mocked my little online boutique, I was building Eclipse Luxury Group into a $3,200 million, 0-cents company with 6 subsidiaries and global distribution, all while they clung to a business model straight out of the 1980s. $3 billion, Jordan choked, nearly spilling his wine. With a B? Give or take a few million, I said with a shrug. It's been a good quarter. My father finally spoke, but his voice trembled with barely contained anger. If this is true, if you really own our debt, why, he asked, why would you do this to your own family? I set my wineglass down gently. You mean the family that told me I was lucky to get a warehouse job after finishing my MBA? The family that rejected every strategy I presented? The one that's mocked me at every holiday table? Silence. Right then, my phone buzzed. Perfect timing. "Excuse me," I said, rising smoothly. "That's probably my assistant with the final documents." I stepped into the hallway. The old hardwood floor creaked beneath my heels. Behind me, the dining room door muffled the chaos. He's bluffing. Check the bank accounts. Call the attorney. I smiled and answered, "Yes, Jennifer?" "Everything's complete, Miss Cole," she said. "Bankruptcy has been processed. Acquisition documents are signed. Should we dispatch the team?" "Give them 5 minutes," I replied. "Let them sit with it first." When I returned, they were clustered around Uncle Raymond's phone, eyes locked on frantic email threads and court notifications. "Well," I said, settling into my seat again, "shall we talk next steps? My team will be here shortly with the restructuring proposals." "Team?" my mother repeated faintly. Right then the doorbell rang. I glanced at my watch. Right on time. "That would be my legal and financial advisors," I said, cheerful as ever. "Hope you don't mind if they join us for dessert." My father stood, face flushed. "Now wait just a minute, Vanessa." "Actually, no," I interrupted. "You're bankrupt. You've defaulted on $142 million 0 cents in loans. Loans I now control. You have 2 options," I continued calmly. "Work with me on an orderly sale, or I trigger full liquidation Monday morning." Elise burst into tears, mascara streaking. "But the new mills, the expansion, were never going to happen," I finished for her. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have known better, hit subscribe and follow Vanessa's journey, because what happens next will change everything. Cole Timber has been insolvent for months. Did any of you even read the financials, or were you too busy giving yourselves titles and planning cocktail parties to notice you were hemorrhaging cash? Right on cue, Jennifer entered with the rest of my team, 3 attorneys and 2 financial advisors, all dressed in tailored navy suits, each carrying slim leather briefcases. The contrast was striking, composed professionals against a room full of stunned, slumping relatives. "Miss Cole," one of the attorneys greeted me with a crisp nod. "Shall we begin?" "Please," I said, gesturing toward the dessert plates my mother had just set down. "Help yourselves to some pumpkin pie while we work. My mother's recipe is excellent." For the next 2 hours, we walked them through the full financial picture. The tangled debt structure, the missed payments, the cascading defaults, and my final acquisition proposal. Every detail had been methodically prepared. I'd spent nearly a year buying their liabilities quietly through different holding companies, watching as they ignored red flags and doubled down on outdated ideas. "This is thorough," Uncle Raymond muttered, flipping reluctantly through the restructuring binder. "Unlike some people," I replied with a faint smile, "I actually understand business strategy." By the end of the review, Cole Timber no longer belonged to them, not in practice, and soon, not even in name. I'd offered fair terms, all things considered, but no one sitting at that table doubted who held the reins now. As my team began gathering their files, I rose and faced the room. "Mom, Elise, Jordan, Todd," I said evenly, "your positions are being eliminated. Please, clear your offices by Monday." "You're firing us?" Elise gasped, her voice high and panicked. "We're your family." "No," I said coldly. "I'm firing unqualified managers who were promoted through nepotism. But if it helps," I smoothed the front of my charcoal gray dress, simple and precise. "I hear the DMV is hiring." "Thank you for dinner, Mom," I added. "The turkey was excellent, even if we didn't make it to dessert." "Vanessa." My father's voice cracked as I turned toward the door. "Was this just about revenge?" I paused, glancing back at the half-eaten plates, the folder lying open like a wound, the disbelief still frozen on their faces. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "This was business." I stepped toward the foyer, then stopped one last time. "The revenge? That's just a bonus." As I walked out to the gravel driveway, I could hear Elise sobbing about losing her house, her trainer, her golf club, Jordan shouted something about a lawsuit, but it rang hollow. I slid into the black S-Class Mercedes I leased for exactly this moment. A deliberate choice. In the rearview mirror, I saw them clustered at the window, still watching me leave. Then my phone buzzed. A final message from Jennifer. "Congratulations, Miss Cole." The acquisition announcement was queued for Monday morning. Jennifer's message lit up my phone just as I merged onto I-26, the Cole farmhouse, and its stunned, silent occupants, shrinking behind me in the rearview mirror. I smiled, imagining how different next Thanksgiving would look. Would they still call me the family embarrassment when I owned their company? Still joke about my little online shop while polishing their resumes? Somehow I doubted it. 1 week later, Cole Timber was officially rebranded as Eclipse Manufacturing, the latest division under the Eclipse Luxury Group umbrella. I kept the original tree ring logo, my grandfather's design from the 1950, but added one quiet detail, a soft eclipse symbol curled into the roots. A permanent signature. Proof that the so-called family failure had outgrown, outbuilt, and ultimately eclipsed them all. Elise eventually landed a job at a local department store. Not Walmart, but not far off. Jordan and Todd left North Carolina entirely, their reputations scorched from the collapse. Last I heard, Jordan was managing warehouse stock somewhere outside Tucson. Uncle Raymond retired quietly, his name erased from the business he once ruled, reduced to a footnote in the acquisition paperwork. A month later, my father left a voicemail. It started with, "Vanessa, I was wrong about you," and ended with, "Would you consider bringing me on as a consultant?" I had Jennifer send our standard rejection email. No variations, no exceptions, just like any other applicant who didn't meet the requirements. That Thanksgiving, I didn't go back to the farmhouse. I was in Millinaw, finalizing a deal to acquire a Scandinavian textile mill, another strategic move for Eclipse's global expansion. But I did send cards. One to each of them, elegantly embossed with the new Eclipse Manufacturing logo. Inside, just a short note, handwritten in silver ink. "Thankful for all the lessons you taught me about real business. Hope you're enjoying your real jobs." Sometimes, the best revenge doesn't come with shouting or anger or even confrontation. It comes wrapped in silence. In the soft closing of a door. In embossed paper and silver ink. In watching those who doubted you realize far too late that you were never the failure. You were the feature. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for watching, but for seeing me. For every person who's ever been dismissed at a family dinner, overlooked in meetings, or told they weren't enough. I hope my story gives you strength. And if it did, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, what would you have said to them if you were in my shoes? I built my success quietly, piece by piece, while they laughed behind my back. And maybe you're doing the same right now, working late, dreaming big, carrying more than anyone realizes. If that's you, don't stop. Keep building, even when no one claps for you, especially then. And if you believe stories like mine deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Support the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, the ones who build in silence and rise on their own terms. Because one day, you'll walk into a room full of people who doubted you, and they won't even recognize who you've become. I'm Vanessa Cole, and this wasn't revenge. This was the long game, and I'm just getting started.